everyone. Welcome to Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. We are back. As always, I am Clark Weininger. I am joined by my friend and co-host and muse, mentor. He holds a lot of hats, wears a lot of hats. But Evan Lindsay, we're back. How you doing? Happy New Year. It's 2024. There's a lot of Giants things to talk about. We've been off for a little bit, but first off, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be back. We did, if you tuned in last season, we did a couple little off-season episodes, but haven't been back to it for a while. But we are really excited about our second season here. First season was kind of just realizing something that we've always wanted to do together. But rest assured, we've been scheming. We're cooking up some things, much as Farhan theoretically is cooking. We are working on some exciting stuff for this season.
I'd say much like Farhan, we're cooking under the radar, and things are coming out that people are not expecting. But the things that people were expecting from us haven't quite happened. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that is a fair assessment.
And or the Giants.
Yes, I think that we, as I said to you the other day, we're making long braised stews that take a long time to develop flavor. But a couple things to look out for this year is we're going to be on a more a different kind of release schedule throughout the off season. We'll be doing into the end of the off season rather. We will be doing kind of sporadic episodes, and then once the season starts, you'll be getting more episodes after certain series and before key series. We'll be checking in and previewing the next series. We'll be doing some live episodes too. That's something to look out for. We'll have more information on that soon. And something we're excited to add to the roster this year for us is we have started a voicemail that we would love for you to leave us questions, comments, whatever. We know that we're in a uniquely positioned place in Giants fandom right now, where there's lots of opinions, feelings, emotions flying around. And we want to make you a bigger part of what we do. So if you want to get involved, you can call us at 415-320-7269. Leave us a voicemail, and we will respond to those in our next episode. And we'll be doing that throughout the rest of the season, and we're really excited for that too. Clark, how you doing?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. We really want to bring this interactive piece to this podcast. I mean, we're not media insiders. We're not Giants insiders, but we're fans. We have a lot of friends and people who tuned in last year when we were recording who are really into the Giants, and we want everyone's voice in this. We're trying to create more of a kind of community. I'd say one of my big takeaways from us recording last year and just seeing a lot of the conversation this offseason, and we'll get to more of kind of what's happened this offseason for those who either want a refresher or haven't really been paying attention. But there's been a lot of negativity in Giants land this offseason. And, we'll debate the merits of that in a little bit. But I think more than anything for me, and I think I can speak for Evan here, sports is all about enjoying the community, enjoying the kind of sense of pride that you get from seeing people in the colored jerseys that you wear while watching them, and rooting for individual players' stories, etc. So Evan and I want to bring that a little bit more this year, and not feel like we're, reporting on the facts or reporting on the details of the games as much, but more kind of the stories, the entertainment aspect of it. And we feel like, some of our friends in the Giants fandom community can add so much to that as well. So, please, again, 415-320-7269. We'll link that as well when this is posted. But yeah, we want to hear from all of you just as much as we want to hear ourselves talk. Isn't that right, Evan?
That is correct. Always correct. Love hearing myself talk. But I think at the same time, we recognize that there's a lot of different stances on where the Giants are right now, and there's no right or wrong answer at the end of the day. Like how you experience being a fan is up to you. But I think what we're trying to do this season is to really center like what we can be excited about, and when things need to be criticized, we'll criticize them too. Don't like I think at times, like, last season we are, I think we're beginning to maybe separate slightly, but if you look at Clark's shirt, would you be willing to show that? We've got a big Farhan fan here, and I am too, but everybody's experiencing this differently. Everybody started being a fan at a different time and has different expectations about what this team is supposed to be. And we welcome all of that. Like, I think that right now I feel the pain of Giants fans, and I think there's only so many places that you can go to get that. And often right now in the media, there's a lot of spin one way or another, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but then that's met with a lot of vitriol in the comments too. So I think we're trying to find a midpoint and really ground ourselves in the passion that Bay Area sports fans bring. So anyway, I think that this is a good little preview of what we're trying to do this season. But I think we can go ahead and jump right into a bit of an off-season preview if you feel ready to do that.
Yeah. So yeah,
Not preview,
I'll jump
review.
in. Preview will come after. No, but yeah, we'll jump in. So when we recorded last, we were kind of debriefing the Bob Melvin hiring. And I think that has really set the tone across this offseason in a lot of ways. So Bob came in and really kind of hammered in the like former Giant culture and forever Giant vibes. And I think it's pretty clear that the Giants are trying to get back to those roots a little bit more than they were in the Kapler era. It felt like the Kapler era, and I enjoyed it a lot, but it felt like we were trying to be the Tampa Bay Rays of the West. And yes. I just don't think that fit the ethos of this culture, of this community, of this organization. I think, not to, badmouth the Rays, but like there's too much history with the Giants. There's too much wealth here in the Bay Area for us to be a small market team and thinking that way. But I do think, some of that leads to wins as well. So we'll get into more of that. But after hiring Bob Melvin, we hired a full kind of new coaching staff. We kept on Alyssa Nacken, Mark Hallberg, who's switching from third base to first base. And we replaced Hallberg at third with former Giants legend Matt Williams. We have Jason Christensen as bench coach, who replaced Kai Correa, who remind me where Kai ended up going. He went to another organization.
The Guardians, I think, I want to say.
Yeah, you're right. Guardians, who, Vogt and Craig Albernaz went out there too, which I think that's going to be a potential big loss. The catching core really loved him, and we saw Blake Sable make a lot of improvements, and Patty Barrels was great last year. So, and then Pat Burrell was hired as a co-hitting coach. Justin Veal is still around, and they will be focusing on different aspects of the kind of hitting department for the Giants, which I think will be exciting to kind of track into the season. But yeah, coaching staff is kind of mostly new, and we've got Dusty Baker, who's going to be a consultant for us. Apparently Dusty resides in Sacramento, which I didn't know. So he's going to be spending a lot of time with the River Cats organization, which is really cool. So a lot of former Giants. I think bringing that into the fold is a great sign of the direction of this organization for me. And Evan, do you mind sharing what we did in the offseason player wise?
Yeah, and real quickly on that point too, I would say that within those coaching choices and everything from Melvin down, you definitely in this offseason are feeling the effects of a louder voice from ownership, which includes Buster Posey. I think you're really hearing his effect on the way that the club is being operated this offseason, as well as just the rest of ownership and this desire, as you're saying, to kind of get back to the Giants way, whatever that might be. And so on the player side, the goal, as stated by president of baseball ops, Farhan Zaidi, is that his title?
Yeah, it is.
Still?
A lot
Yeah.
of people call him GM, which I always kind of chuckle at. Not that, like, I think people use the term general manager to mean what his title is, but I see it on
Pete
Twitter
Butilla.
a lot where they're like, it is Pete Butilla who's our GM. People are like, we need to hire Farhan. He's an awful GM. And it's like, yeah, he's pretty awful because that's not his job. But yeah, president of baseball ops, Peebo.
Peebo and Pete Butilla. So the goals, as is stated by Farhan, were to be operating at the top of the free agent market. It's not a deep free agent market this year, but there was some big names at the top of it, still are as of this recording. And secondly, it seems like there was a real goal which has kind of been the last few years, so don't know how I feel about this, but to get more athletic, younger, but not in an ageist way, he said, and kind of just upgrade up the middle, especially, I think, has been a priority. And I think that we are in progress with some of those goals. Clark, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the Jung-Hoo Lee signing hit that kind of straight on. Young, athletic. We signed him for 6 years. I think it was ultimately like $113 million with a $19 million posting fee, which was big. Giants put their money where their mouth was with that signing and wanted their guy and got their guy. And Jung-Hoo, I think, is going to be a fan favorite. I'm really excited to cheer for him. His introductory press conference and tour of Oracle Park, all the content that came out around his signing was really fun. But to your point, stated goal, stated signing. I think that has worked really well together. And I'm excited to see the athleticism, speed, kind of more fun baseball that he provides. So yeah, we went 1 for 1 with that. But more happened this offseason. Fortunately and unfortunately.
I think to go off your point about Jung-Hoo, I feel like it's a major signing. It's the Giants' biggest free agent signing ever, barring the contract extensions we've given to Buster Posey. But it's a big deal. It's maybe not the splash that the Giants fans have been waiting for. But I think theoretically it solves a major need for us. We've talked previously.
I think multiple major needs. I think to the point we're talking about it, the athleticism, the speed, the like just different approach. And then also I think he's just going to be fun to root for, which we kind of lack.
Yeah.
Frankly. But
that's
keep
the biggest
spitting.
thing. Like I'll put in there'll be some clips in here of his introductory press conference.
Hello, Giants. My name is Jung-Hoo Lee, grandson of the wind from Korea. Special thank you, my lawyer, Scott Boras. I am here to win and will always give my best for teammates and fans. Let's go, Giants! Handsome?
He immediately endeared himself to me, and I was all aboard with him. I think it's a signing that, and I think we'll talk about this theme as the offseason goes on, but it's a signing for this year and for the future too. And I think that that's a big thing. To get a young, athletic center fielder is a big thing for us. And, Ha-Sung Kim is a parallel that people have drawn just coming over from the KBO from Korea. And it took him a year or so too to like get acclimated to the league and really like come into his own. And I think fans have to prepare themselves for the fact that that might be something that happens. But I'm high on him. I think that he's like, to me, his floor is like 2 WAR of a player, but I think he could be, a 4 WAR, like 5 WAR guy at his best. And I'm really excited to watch him play. And I think that if this signing works out and the Giants evaluated him correctly, it's absolutely a slam dunk. And I don't think it's even an overpay as industry feels that it is. Yes, he doesn't have the power maybe that people were hoping for at that position, but I think he's more going to make up for it with the contact and on-base skills.
Yeah, I think I really like the point you just made. It feels like so much of this offseason has been kind of, yes, for 2024, this guy will be helpful and fit a need that we have. But it kind of feels like Farhan is gearing a lot of this for a 2025, like true, I don't want to use the word contender push because I have been burned enough over the last few years thinking we were good enough to contend, take 2021 aside. But yeah, just to kind of transition into a couple of the other moves, we made a really, I think, inspired trade for Robbie Ray, 2021 Cy Young Award winner of the Blue Jays at the time. He signed a 5-year deal with the Mariners and got hurt last year after kind of a fine year in 2022 and will be out for most of this season as well. But at his best, he's a Cy Young Award winner. And at his worst, we saw him with the Diamondbacks when he was, I think, a fine starter. And the beauty of this is we're not asking him to be a Cy Young Award winner, but pairing him with Logan Webb. Ray is a lefty, kind of a similar profile to Carlos Rodon, throws the four-seam fastball a lot, has a nice slider. I think he has a little bit more of a changeup kind of third pitch than Rodon did, and not quite as fast of a fastball, but still very effective. And then we, speaking of fast fastballs, signed Jordan Hicks last week. And by the time this is out, I think he will have spoken to the media and been fully introduced, pending physical. But I think that is another signing that for this year, absolutely, we're going to see what we have with him. But we signed him 4 years, $44 million. That's about market rate for a reliever. But we announced immediately that the plan is to have him start, which he wants to do, at least to start the year, which helps because Ray's going to be hurt as well as Alex Cobb. So yeah, to your point, 2025, it feels like there's a push in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Ray and Hicks both go to that. Ray is obviously there's a hope that he will pick up his that the option will be picked up for the subsequent seasons. And I think honestly, it's a great move. I think the significance of it is as much about acquiring Ray as it is about kind of getting rid of the dead weight of Anthony DeSclafani and Mitch Haniger. I wouldn't be surprised to see Haniger rebound this year, but at the end of the day, the health is the biggest question with him. And I think that he's always been good when he's on the field, but the injuries are inevitable. And I hate putting that label with any player, but you kind of just have to with him. The history is there. So I think being able to essentially, they threw on some money. So it was basically a cash neutral deal. And I think that was a really big move for us this offseason. And you spoke about Hicks too. Obviously, there's some the biggest thing that I think people were taking away from this was this idea of him being a starter, because that's what came out in the reports with his signing, that the Giants intend to use him as a starter. I would advise some caution when thinking about what that really means. I think it's a rebrand of the opener, to be honest with you. I think that he hasn't been stretched out for a while. He did start, I believe, in 2022 for 8 starts, but this isn't a guy.
And not super successful.
Exactly.
Either, yeah.
You're not going to have him, especially with pitchers and catchers reporting in a matter of weeks. It's not something where you're going to see him stretched out all the way to be even giving you like an Alex Wood 5 innings or something like that. I think this is a guy that they are going to pair with, Tristan Beck, Keaton Winn, to kind of our pitchers, Ross Stripling pitchers in that category, to kind of build a little bit of a puzzle for how this year is going to work in terms of starting pitching. At this current moment, there's a couple top of the rotation arms still out there. I know a lot of Giants fans are begging for Blake Snell. I have different feelings about it, but at the end of the day, we're starting to see the puzzle that Farhan is trying to construct for this year, kind of riding some of the young guys earlier in the season, Webb, Harrison, and using Hicks to get us to the All-Star break and a little bit after. Cobb is going to be coming back, mid first half.
And he'll be coming back earlier. Yeah, he'll be coming back in around May, I think. So he'll probably only miss a month, which for a guy like him who's in his late 30s, it might actually be nice for him not to have to start the beginning of the year. Because last year he was phenomenal until September. And that wear and tear over the full season, I think, is why he wasn't that successful. So kind of pushing back his start date. I don't hate it. I'm going to just say that. I don't hate it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think with baseball, you can never have enough starters. And I think so.
No. And the Giants have it in droves in their minor leagues right now, in the upper minors too. It's not just like, oh, we have this kid in single A who's killing it. I'm just going to list them out right now. My favorite, I'm planting my flag, and it's not just because we share the same first three letters of our last name. Keaton Wynn, I think, is poised to have a really nice year. I think we're going to use him a lot. Tristan Beck, that you mentioned, was really, I think, underappreciated how good he was last year for us in that swingman role too. His role was never that clearly defined, and when he was asked to pitch, he was great all year. We've got top 100 in certain outlet prospect Carson Wisenhunt, who's not on our 40 man because he was just drafted 2 years ago. But I mean, he went from low A to triple A, or I don't know if he pitched actually in Sacramento, but I think he's going to start the year in Sacramento this year. He has one of the best changeups from a lefty in all of the world, not just minor leagues, not just MLB. So I'm excited to see what he can do this year. Mason Black is another prospect we drafted a few years ago who looks really poised to be able to produce at some point this year. And if we don't need him, that's a plus too. So that's kind of a win-win. We've got Kaiwei Tang, who we got a while ago in the Mark Melanson trade. Maybe it was the Sean Dyson. I'm getting the two trades mixed up because I think we got Tristan Beck from one of them. Same era. But he is now on the 40 man, and he's kind of like our Jacob Junis redux, I think. He has a really filthy slider that's really deceptive, but throws a bunch of pitches, and I think can also be in that kind of swingman role. And you mentioned Harrison, you mentioned Stripling. And the beauty of it, because it looks like we're going to kind of do what we did last year, have this like 8 to 9 man depth chart of starters. But last year, they were all veterans, so we couldn't kind of move them up and down AAA and stuff. It feels like this year we're going to have a lot more flexibility, which I think is interesting. Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I think Hicks, expect him to be, giving us 2-3 innings, maybe 4 innings when he's stretched out or something by the half. But I think the whole thing that Melvin and the news staff is talking about is, return to like more prototypical baseball things. I think a lot of fans were exhausted by the cycle of pitchers that we've been using, but I expect to see a little bit more traditional starter usage. And I think that actually I'm a fan of this because I think it's going to show us what we have, which is really important. Like you said, we were saddled with a lot of these like mid starters, mid to below average starters last year. But then you look at somebody like Sean Manaea, who was able to translate, what was it, like 8-9 starts or something into a deal with the Mets. And that was only when we allowed him to start a game in the traditional way. And I think that that's kind of a theme that's running throughout our roster construction for this year is like, let's really for real see what we have instead of trying to at every margin optimize everything and try to cobble together some platoon thing to like maximize wins. I think this year is going to be exciting to see who are these guys from the farm system that are going to come up, maybe guys that have had some chances but haven't yet been able to get break through, and see who might be able to develop. I think being able to unload Haniger to the Mariners is a big one for us, because now last year it almost felt like Heliot Ramos had his future over with our organization, but it's looking like he's getting one more chance. Matos is getting a chance to show up right now. And I would like to quickly reference Clark started a Substack this year and is writing often about all Bay Area sports, and has a great article about why we shouldn't sign Matt Chapman, of which I'm in full agreement, in large part because I think that there's certain guys that we haven't seen yet step into their own, but a guy like Casey Schmidt, I'd love to see what he can do over a full season. And I also recently listened to one of Kerry Crowley's podcasts, and he made a lot of comparisons between Schmidt and Brandon Crawford earlier in his career, that the glove will play. And so I don't know. I think there's a theme throughout the roster. Any thoughts to add, Clark?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to shout out Heliot Ramos because I think we drafted him in the first round in 2017. We've had him in our organization for so long, but he's 24 years old. He is theoretically about to enter his prime as a baseball player. And as you mentioned, trading Haniger was more to give him space to play. Now, we still have Lee in center. We have Conforto still on the roster. He opted in to his 2-year deal that he signed last year. So this is going to be his last year with us, most likely. But we've got Yaz in right field. And I think that defensive alignment works a lot better. Yaz is a Gold Glove caliber right fielder. And Conforto was solidly above average, in my opinion, in the outfield last year in both corners. So our outfield defense is going to be really solid this year. And then when inevitably Yastrzemski, pulls a hamstring and is out for 2 weeks, or Conforto wakes up and has back spasms and we put him on the IL for a little bit, Ramos and Matos will have a direct line to playing time. And speaking of direct lines to playing time, I love that this offseason we have not signed a single shortstop. Marco Luciano is getting the full support of the organization. And it feels like the team, the whole organization, I should say, is just leaning into these guys and saying, okay, we're trying to play both sides. It's kind of like what the Warriors have been struggling with over the last couple of years. It's like this 2-timeline approach where, for better or worse, we have a very rabid fan base out here in the Bay Area who demands that our teams be successful. And I'm right there with it. Like, I want good teams. I'm rooting for the Niners right now. It's really fun to watch a team stacked with talent. But we also have to be realistic about how you get that talent. And so often it starts with the homegrown players that you're able to develop. And then once you develop guys, and if we just use our Giants right now, it's Luciano at short, Bailey at catcher. And ostensibly, Jung-Hoo Lee fits into this because he's 25 years old. And so when you've got this up the middle talent, you've got Matos and Ramos who can play the corners and also kind of moonlight in center field. You've got Casey Schmidt at third base, and Tyro, who's not very old, but is a really solid second baseman. You've got the makings of a young core that then, once they prove that they can be big league regulars, then you go out and sign a Pete Alonso to play first base, or a left fielder in the future who can hit 30 home runs. But the Giants have been making all these like small moves just to get solid players. And I think we're past that point. So you mentioned, I'll pass it along to you to kind of further this point, because I think you were making a really good point here. But there's this conversation about Snell Bellinger, and Chapman. And I think there are merits to signing all three of them. And I think in a vacuum, they help us next year. But I worry that they're not a good long-term fit. And in the short term, they won't bring us a World Series next year. So if they don't accomplish the short-term or the long-term goals necessarily, I'm not quite sure what they do.
Yeah, I think the obsession with these three players, I think, speaks to a broader thing that's happening in terms of the perception of how the Giants are interacting with the top of the free agent market. And at this point, fans are desperate for players that you can pencil into the lineup every day, just top of the rotation starters, just like premium talent. I think, obviously you and I get excited about prospects and these young guys, and we love a Tyro Estrada and guys like that, and a Jung-Hoo Lee. It really speaks to our hearts. But like, I think for an average fan, like JD Davis is not exciting. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's Michael Conforto is not exciting. These types of players are, I've seen this said in 1,000 different ways about this Giants team. There's no disasters on this lineup, but there's no big spark plugs that are no stars yet. And I think that's an important thing to be considering when thinking about this, is that the free agent market rewards past performance and it does not guarantee future performance. And I think, let's go through this list of these players. Matt Chapman is almost a mirror image of Evan Longoria before he came to the Giants, just in terms of being a defense first guy you can throw in the lineup every day, is playing in a dome, his OBP is kind of going down. You think he's just going to be a consistent thing that stabilizes your lineup. And ultimately, I think Longoria was a good Giant, but he didn't really serve the purpose that I think that the Giants intended him. But we were just trying to like make a last bid to be relevant. And I think that that's kind of the issue here with Chapman. With Blake Snell.
Well, with Longoria, if I can just interrupt you real quick with Longo, he was such a solid player.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments to your point where he's similar to Chapman is he was so durable for his career. And then during his Giants tenure, he was constantly hurt and Hunter Pence was very similar to this too. He was an Iron Man for us. And then all of a sudden you get a couple injuries. And then in your mid 30s, you just have a hard time being as durable as you once were. And I'm not wishing that on Chapman, but it worries me a little bit if we sign him to like a 5 or 6 year deal. I think if we sign him for 3 years, I'm a little bit more okay with it. I would still prefer to see Casey Schmidt be penciled in as our starting third baseman next season. But it's kind of the longevity of, at least with the Chapman, I think as we go into Snell and Bellinger, there are other considerations, but that worries me. And I think the Longo comparison's good.
And let me be honest, I took that from Kerry Crowley right out of his mouth. But I also like...
Oh, good job, Kerry.
But in addition, like, I think Snell is kind of like, it's giving Zito vibes to me a little bit.
Big time.
I think that I think what fans want to see is the product this year be drastically different than what happens last year. And the thing with baseball is that it takes time to establish things, and things can happen quick. You think about the Rangers and how quickly they made it to the World Series after being objectively awful, but you have to have some pieces in place to get to that point. And I think that Snell is a roll of the dice what you get this year. So like, even if he is pitching at an all-star level, like, look at what we had with Carlos Rodon. Like, it was great, but like, what has that given us long-term in terms of like building a sustainable winner? Nothing. And I think,
well, and if I can just interrupt real quickly, last year the Rangers signed the best free agent on the market, a little guy by the name of Jacob deGrom. He was hurt all year. He did not contribute to their World Series. Now, their fans were stoked. They're like, we're winning the World Series this year. We got deGrom, and they built out a whole offseason of pitchers, free agent pitchers, and the rest of them stayed healthy. It was actually very impressive ultimately. But I think the deGrom the DeGrom Snell comparison, as well as your Zito comparison, is apt here because I think you're paying for what you've seen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what you've seen is what you're going to get. And we just talked about the optionality and flexibility of our rotation this upcoming year, and he takes away from that. And if he's bad, then that screws us. If he's really good, obviously wonderful. But
I think almost whether he's really good or not this season is kind of irrelevant to the point of like what the Giants are trying to do. Like, I think when I think of like and I want to talk about them too in a second, is when I think about what the Dodgers have done this year, or what the premier teams in this league have done, I think about actually the Braves over the Dodgers in terms of like they are a sustainable team because they're built on youth, and this is a sport that rewards youth, especially in today's game. And
it is, whether you agree with it or not, that's just the reality of it. I've been in little arguments on Twitter with people who are like, you don't want them to sign these guys because you're pro ownership, or you want the team to save money. And it's like, no, I want them to save money for other guys. I don't want them to hold on to their money forever, but it hamstrings you.
Yes, exactly.
Which ironically is what Haniger didn't have.
Totally. Sorry, and just to wrap up the previous thought, Bellinger, it's giving Chris Bryant. That's all I have to say about that. And moving forward, I think a big thing of this offseason and a big thing that's gotten the ire of Giants fans is losing out on Yamamoto and Ohtani. And I think that people, that's the big one. And that's the one that people are most mad about. And at the end of the day, a couple things are true. Number one, we were never getting either of them because Ohtani and Yamamoto both wanted to be Dodgers the whole time, and we bid very similar, I think on both. But ultimately, it's not just about money. The Dodgers have built a sustainable winner, and they both wanted to win, and they want to, get to a World Series.
And they built the sustainable winner the way that we're arguing.
Yes,
they built it with the Corey Seager, drafting and developing Corey Seager, Jock Peterson, Bellinger, a Chris Taylor, who I'm really hoping, we haven't mentioned him yet, but like a Tyler Fitzgerald can become that type of player for us. But you have to develop these guys. And then a guy like Justin Turner, very similar to Mike Yastrzemski for us, a guy who peaked late, you got on a bargain, but becomes a regular and a clubhouse leader for you as you bring these young guys up. I think what the Dodgers did, and it's no accident that Farhan came from the Dodgers, he's trying to build this, but you have to build the development before you just start signing the guys, because as you said, the guys who you want won't come unless you've proven that you can build a sustainable winner. And yeah, I'm sad we lost out on Ohtani and Yamamoto, but we didn't really have a chance because we haven't gotten to that point
exactly.
yet.
And I think that, look, I was crushed when we did not get both of them. I'll be honest, like our hopes were sky high, but it's just,
and the fact that they went to the goddamn Dodgers.
and it's horrible. But like,
anyway, keep going.
But 2 quick points before we wrap things up for this episode here is this is just because the Giants made big offers for both players doesn't mean that money can just be thrown around to a bunch of other players, because look at what happened last season with Carlos Correa and then all these guys that we got. Quantity and quality.
Or even Judge. I mean, think about
exactly. And
keep going.
It's like if you earmark money in your budget for Wagyu A5 beef steak, getting a bunch of McDonald's hamburgers does not equal the same thing. Do you know what I mean? And just because you can buy it doesn't mean that you should. You're getting something different out of this than you're getting out of that. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And that, like, the Dodgers, our competition was never the Dodgers. Yes, we're in the same division as NOS, but pencil them in number one. They'll take the division. Our competition is the Diamondbacks and the Padres, because we have no before Ohtani and Yamamoto, we weren't going for first in the West. It wasn't happening. So we have to be realistic about where we are. But anyway, let's quickly move and just look forward to the rest of the offseason and what you're thinking about for that.
Yeah, well, I think we have a couple things. We have a couple needs left, which is, I think the main one is in my head, which is like not a huge thing, but like someone who can back up shortstop.
Yeah.
And preferably someone left-handed. Is that Brandon Crawford's music? Probably not. But I think someone who fits like that left-handed but utility infielder type, brings some versatility to us. I think we've talked about in private how much we would love Tommy Edman. I still actually, as we've filled out this roster, I get a little nervous with adding someone like him who would need to play every day. So it'll be interesting to kind of see kind of how that works and how we fill that void. And if it is Tyler Fitzgerald who backs up shortstop and we have a very right-handed infield, so be it. We have a couple bullpen slots. I think one more lefty reliever potentially. And maybe one more starter, although it feels like based on what we've talked about that we're kind of confident with what we've got, especially early on. Is there anything I'm leaving out? Any other types of moves?
It's very like, I expect like one or two more quote unquote major moves. And that's major in the Farhan sense of major, which is like that, right. The Robbie Ray
Jordan
thing was
Hicks
like a major signing. Jordan Hicks was a major to minor signing. And I think I would just say I haven't really understood throughout this offseason the plan, but it's beginning to shape up. And I kind of like am waiting to see what the finished product is. And also, look, like rosters are flexible, especially under somebody like Farhan. The opening day roster is not a reflection of the roster that ends the year. That's always true about every team.
Preach.
So I think we just have to be patient and see what comes out here at the end. I would love to see one more major offensive player if we can get them. I think there's room for one more starter. Don't know if it's going to happen, but I think that's more or less what we have to look forward to. This is our first episode. We'll be recording our second episode upcoming here. Look out for our socials for when that's coming up. But we have something special scheduled, and we may or may not be in person for the episode, our very first in-person episode. Want to thank you for
nice tease.
Want to thank you for tuning in this week. We're really excited about this season, both for our podcast and for the Giants both. And we will see you in the next one.